Hey, tonight we're going to journey back to the early 1900s in rural England. We'll discover what it was like to be a farmer during the Edwardian era, a time when life moved at the pace of the seasons and the rhythms of nature dictated your days. You're going to experience the struggles, simple joys, and daily challenges of a family trying to make a living from the land during a difficult economic time. I promise you'll feel the morning frost on your face, the ache in your muscles after a long day's work, and the warm satisfaction of gathering around a fire after sunset. Hey, if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you're listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Now, find a cozy spot, take a slow, deep breath, and let your body sink into comfort as we journey back in time together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in Edwardian England, sometime around 1907. It's still dark outside, but the faintest grey light is beginning to seep through the small window of your cottage bedroom. The air is bitterly cold, making your breath visible in small clouds. Your feet recoil as they touch the wooden floorboards, and you hurriedly pull on thick woolen socks that your wife knitted last winter. They're scratchy against your skin, but blessedly warm. You can hear your wife already moving about downstairs, the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath her feet as she stokes the range to life. The smell of wood smoke drifts up through the cottage. Your children, all 4 of them, are still fast asleep in the next room, huddled together under heavy blankets for warmth. January in rural Devon doesn't show mercy to anyone, least of all farmers like yourself. The cottage is what locals call a 2 up, 2 down. 2 small bedrooms upstairs and 2 rooms downstairs, a main living area and a kitchen. It's not much, but it's home, and you're fortunate compared to some. The cottage comes with your position as a tenant farmer on Squire Hawkins's land. You farm about 40 acres. Not enough to make you wealthy by any means, but sufficient to feed your family and, in good years, provide a modest income. As you pull on your heavy cotton shirt, rough trousers and thick waistcoat, you think about the day ahead. The cows need milking, the horses need feeding, and there's a fence in the south field that won't repair itself. Your bones ache slightly from yesterday's labour, a constant companion in a farmer's life. Downstairs, your wife Emma has the range glowing hot now. Unlike the grand fireplaces in the manor house, your range is the heart of your home, a cast iron stove that provides heat, hot water and a cooking surface all in one. Emma is already preparing a hearty breakfast. You'll need the energy for the hours ahead. Good morning, she says, not looking up from the pot of porridge she's stirring. Sleep well? Well enough, you reply, rubbing your hands together near the range to warm them. Though I swear that wind found every crack in the walls last night. Emma smiles softly. She looks tired, you notice. The winter has been long, and managing a household with 4 children while helping with farm chores has taken its toll. Her hands are red and chapped from washing clothes in cold water, and there are new lines around her eyes that weren't there last spring. I've heated some water for you to wash, she says, nodding toward a basin on the table. The luxury of warm water to splash on your face and hands feels magnificent, the heat seeping into your skin and bringing life back to your numb fingers. The porridge is ready now, thick and steaming. Emma sprinkles a precious pinch of sugar over yours, a small extravagance. Sugar is expensive, and like many farming families, you're careful with money. The agricultural depression that began in the 1870s still casts a long shadow over British farming, even now in the early 1900s. Cheap grain from America and meat from Argentina have flooded the market, driving prices down. Many farmers you knew as a boy have abandoned their land, seeking work in towns and cities. But not you. This land, this life, is in your blood. As you eat, you discuss the day's work with Emma. Your oldest son, Thomas, now 12, will help with the animals before heading to the village school. At his age, you were already working full days on your father's farm, but education is more valued now, even for farmers' children. Your youngest little Mary is just 4 and will stay with Emma, while the middle 2 will also attend school after helping with morning chores. The porridge fills your belly with warmth that spreads through your limbs. Outside, the darkness is giving way to a pearly dawn light. It's time to head out to the barn. You pull on your heavy work jacket, a woolen scarf that Emma knitted years ago, and a flat cap. In your pocket is a folded handkerchief, also Emma's handiwork. Farm wives in Edwardian England are continuously sewing, knitting, and mending, their hands rarely still. The bitter cold hits you like a wall as you step outside. The ground is hard with frost crunching beneath your heavy boots. Your breath forms thick clouds in the air, and your nose and ears sting from the cold. Winter has a grip on the land that won't loosen for weeks yet. The farmyard is quiet except for the soft nickering of the horses who've heard your approach. In the barn, you light a lantern, the yellow glow illuminating the space. The sweet smell of hay mingles with the earthier scents of animals and manure. There's comfort in these familiar smells. They're the scent of life continuing, of work to be done. Your 2 cart horses, massive shires named Tom and Prince, thrust their heads over their stall doors in anticipation of breakfast. They're enormous creatures, 18 hands high, with broad backs and powerful legs. Their hooves are the size of dinner plates, and when they work the fields, the ground trembles beneath them. But for all their size, they're gentle giants, pushing their velvety noses against your chest in greeting. "Morning, lads," you murmur, patting their necks. Their warmth radiates through your gloved hands. "Ready for some breakfast, are you?" You fork fresh hay into their mangers and measure out precious oats. Feed is expensive and you're careful with the portions, but the horses are the farm's powerhouse. They need their strength. As they eat, you check their hooves and brush their coats, the repetitive motion soothing for both you and the animals. Next are the dairy cows, 6 of them, all waiting in their stalls with swollen udders. Milking is a twice-daily ritual that cannot be missed, regardless of weather or personal comfort. You sit on a small 3-legged stool beside the first cow, a docile Jersey named Buttercup, and place the metal pail beneath her. The familiar rhythm begins. Squeeze, pull, release, squeeze, pull, release, as the warm milk hisses into the bucket. The cow's body heat is welcome in the cold barn, and you lean your forehead against her flank as you work, taking comfort in her solid presence. The routine continues with each cow. Your hands, initially stiff with cold, loosen as you work. The methodical nature of milking allows your mind to wander. You think about the fields waiting under frost, about what crops to plant come spring, about whether this year will be better than the last. Farming is an act of perpetual hope, always planting for a future harvest, always believing that the next season will bring abundance. With the milking done, you carry the heavy pails back to the cottage, where Emma will strain the milk and set some aside for butter making. Some of the milk will go to feed your family, but most will be sold to the dairy cooperative in the village, providing a small but steady income. By now, your older children are awake and dressed. Thomas, your firstborn, is tall for his age and already showing the broad shoulders that will serve him well in farm work. He resembles you, same dark hair, same serious eyes. Then there's Alice, 10, who helps Emma with the younger ones. James is 7, still small but eager to prove himself useful. And little Mary, your youngest, with her mother's fair hair and your stubborn chin. "Come on then, Thomas," you say. "The chickens need feeding and the pig's probably wondering where her breakfast is." Thomas pulls on his jacket and cap without complaint. He's a good lad, responsible beyond his years. You wonder sometimes if he resents the early morning chores that his friends from the village don't have to do, but he never says so. Together, you and Thomas head to the chicken coop, where 24 hens and a strutting rooster are already stirring. Eggs are valuable, both for your own table and to sell, so you take good care of these birds. Thomas scatters grain while you collect the eggs, carefully placing them in a small basket. Each one represents a penny or two at market, small sums that add up over time. The family pig, a large sow named Mabel, greets you with enthusiastic grunts. She's not just a pet, she's an investment. Come autumn, she'll provide bacon, ham and sausages to see your family through the winter. For now, though, she enjoys the slops from yesterday's meals, devouring them with noisy appreciation. With the morning animal chores complete, you and Thomas return to the cottage for a quick cup of strong tea before the children head off to school. The kitchen is warm and filled with the scent of baking bread. Emma has been busy while you were in the barn. She's also packed simple lunches for the children, bread with a scraping of dripping and a small apple each. The 3 school-aged children bundle up against the cold, their scarves wrapped high around their faces so only their eyes are visible. The village school is a mile away, a brisk walk that will warm them up. You watch them go, 3 small figures growing smaller as they follow the lane toward the village, their breath clouding around them. "They'll be fine," Emma says, noticing your gaze lingering on the children. "It's stopped snowing at least." "I know," you reply. "Just thinking how different it is from when we were young. My father would have laughed at the idea of sending me to school past the age of 8. Emma nods, understanding the unspoken sentiment. Life is changing, even here in rural Devon. The old ways are slowly giving way to new ideas, children staying in school longer, modern machinery appearing on some farms, motor cars occasionally sputtering along the village roads. It's a time of transition, and sometimes you wonder where your children will fit in this changing world. But such thoughts are a luxury you can't afford for long. There's work waiting, always work. You drink the last of your tea, the strong brew fortifying you against the cold day ahead. "I'll be mending that fence in the south field," you tell Emma, then checking on the sheep. "They should be fine. But with this cold, I'll have dinner ready when you come back," she promises, "and I'll bring you some tea if I can get away." You pull on your heavy work coat again and head out into the morning light. The day has brightened now, revealing a landscape transformed by frost. Every branch, every blade of dormant grass is outlined in white crystal. Your breath still clouds before you, but the bitter edge of dawn has softened slightly. The tools you need are in the small shed adjacent to the barn: a hammer, nails, some lengths of wood, and wire for the fence. Your father's tools, some of them passed down when he could no longer work the land. They're worn but well cared for, the handles smooth from years of use. In farming, you waste nothing, especially not good tools. The south field is a 10-minute walk from the farmyard across a small stream now partially frozen. The damaged section of fence is easy to spot. 2 posts have rotted at their base and collapsed, allowing a gap large enough for sheep to wander through. With lambing season approaching in a few months, secure fencing is essential. You begin the labour of digging out the old posts, your spade striking the frozen ground with a dull thud. It's hard work, the kind that makes your muscles burn and sweat form under your layers despite the cold. But there's satisfaction in it too, in solving problems with your hands, in making broken things whole again. As you work, your mind settles into a peaceful rhythm. The physical labour allows your thoughts to drift, not in anxious circles, but in gentle contemplation. You think about your father teaching you this very task when you were Thomas's age, about how the land looks the same now as it did then, about how it will likely look the same when Thomas is a man with children of his own. This continuity is what you love about farming, even with all its hardships. There's a connection to those who worked this land before you and those who will work it after, in a world that seems to be changing faster every year, with factories and machines and new inventions appearing regularly The fundamental rhythms of farming remain largely unchanged. Sow, tend, harvest, rest, the cycle of seasons governing all. By midday, your stomach is growling and the new fence posts are secure in the ground. You pause to eat the bread and cheese Emma packed for you, sitting on a fallen log with your back to the wind. The food is simple but satisfying, the dense bread filling and the sharp cheese providing flavour. You wash it down with cold water from a metal flask. As you eat, you survey the surrounding landscape, your small corner of England. To the east, you can see the village with its church spire reaching toward the winter sky. Beyond that, rolling hills fade into the distance, some forested, others divided into a patchwork of fields like your own. To the south, on a clear day, you can just make out a sliver of sea on the horizon, though today it's obscured by winter haze. Your 40 acres are modest compared to some, but they're diverse. Pasture for the cows and sheep, fields for crops, a small orchard of apple and pear trees, and a kitchen garden near the cottage where Emma grows vegetables in season. The land is good, not the richest soil in England, but fertile enough if worked properly. After your brief rest, you continue with the fence repairs, weaving wire between the new posts and securing it tightly. Your fingers grow numb despite your gloves, and you occasionally have to stop and blow on them to restore feeling. The wind has picked up, finding its way through every gap in your clothing. By mid-afternoon, the fence is repaired and you make your way to the eastern field where the sheep are huddled together for warmth. You count them carefully, 27 in total, all Dartmoor sheep with thick white fleeces well suited to the harsh local weather. They eye you warily as you check for any signs of illness or distress. In the spring, they'll provide wool for shearing, and some of the lambs will eventually go to market for meat. The dual-purpose nature of sheep makes them valuable livestock for small farmers like yourself. As you finish checking the sheep, you notice dark clouds gathering on the western horizon. Snow, most likely. You'll need to hurry to complete your outdoor tasks before the weather turns. The last thing on today's list is gathering more firewood from the small copse of trees at the edge of your land. The axe swings in a smooth arc, the satisfying thunk as it bites into wood, sending vibrations up your arms. Each stroke brings you closer to warmth for your family. The firewood will feed the range that heats your cottage and cooks your food. It's direct, tangible work with immediate purpose. No middlemen, no market fluctuations, just the straightforward equation of labour resulting in comfort. You've been chopping for perhaps half an hour when the first snowflakes begin to fall, large, lazy flakes that land on your shoulders and melt into the wool of your coat. It's time to head back. You gather the split logs into a wheelbarrow and begin the journey home, the weight making your progress slow on the increasingly slippery ground. The snowfall thickens as you approach the cottage, the world growing quieter under its white blanket. There's a special stillness that comes with snow, a muffling of sounds that creates a sense of isolation, as if your farm is the only place that exists in the world. Through the cottage window you can see the warm glow of lamplight. Smoke rises from the chimney, pushed sideways by the wind. The sight of home, of shelter and warmth waiting gives your tired legs new energy for the final stretch. Emma meets you at the door, taking some of the firewood from your arms. "You're just in time," she says. "The children will be home from school soon and the snow's getting heavier. Inside, the cottage is wonderfully warm after the biting cold outside. The range radiates heat and something savoury bubbles in a pot on top. A stew made with root vegetables from your store and a small amount of salted pork. The smell makes your stomach growl appreciatively. You shed your snow-dusted outer layers and sit in the chair nearest the range, extending your hands toward the heat. The day's labour has left your muscles pleasantly tired, the kind of fatigue that promises sound sleep later. Emma brings you a cup of tea, strong and sweet. The dairy collector came, she tells you, placing a few coins on the table, payment for yesterday's milk. And Mrs. Perkins from the village stopped by to ask if we'd have extra eggs to sell next week. Her sister's family is visiting. You nod, mentally calculating what you can spare. Every penny helps, especially in winter when farm income is at its lowest. The Edwardian economy has not been kind to small farmers. While the Industrial Revolution brought wealth to factory owners and the upper classes enjoy unprecedented luxury, farming families like yours often struggle to stay afloat. The sound of the door opening brings your attention back to the present. The children burst in, their cheeks red from cold, bringing a swirl of snowflakes with them. They chatter excitedly about their day at school, about the snow, about a bird's nest they spotted on the way home. Wash your hands, Emma instructs, and then you can have some bread and jam before your chores. This is the rhythm of your days, work punctuated by small moments of family togetherness. The children help with afternoon tasks. Thomas assists you with bringing in more firewood and checking on the animals one last time before dark, while Alice helps Emma with household chores. Even the younger ones have responsibilities. James feeds the chickens their evening grain, and little Mary sets the table for dinner, carefully placing each spoon just so. As darkness falls completely, the family gathers around the table for the main meal of the day. The stew is delicious, the vegetables tender and the broth rich. There's bread too, fresh baked by Emma, perfect for sopping up the last bits of gravy. You eat hungrily, replenishing the energy spent on physical labour throughout the day. Mealtime is when stories are shared. The children talk about school, what they learned, which friends they played with. Emma mentions village news picked up from Mrs. Perkins. You speak little, content to listen, but occasionally share observations about the livestock or the weather, things relevant to the farm's well-being. After dinner, there's a period of quiet activity before bed. Emma mends a tear in James's trousers while you carve a small wooden horse for Mary, adding to a collection of simple toys you've made over the years. Thomas reads from a book borrowed from the school library. He's the most scholarly of your children and devours any reading material he can find. Alice practices her knitting, her small fingers becoming more dexterous with each project. The snowfall continues outside, visible through the window as white flakes swirling in the darkness. Inside, the lamp casts a golden glow over your family, creating a warm island in the winter night. As the evening grows late, the children's eyelids begin to droop. The day's activities, school, chores, play, have tired them out. One by one, they wash up at the basin, change into night clothes and climb the narrow stairs to bed, with Emma following to tuck them in and perhaps tell a short story to the younger ones. Left alone downstairs, you bank the fire in the range, ensuring it will provide some heat through the night without needing constant attention. Through the floorboards, you can hear the murmur of Emma's voice as she speaks softly to the children, then the creak of the stairs as she descends. "They're all asleep already," she says, returning to her mending. "Even Thomas couldn't keep his eyes open." You nod, unsurprised. It's the fresh air and honest work. Does a body good. The two of you sit in companionable silence for a time, the only sounds the ticking of the clock on the mantel, the occasional pop from the range, and the whisper of Emma's needle through fabric. These quiet evening hours are precious, a time to rest before sleep, to prepare mentally for tomorrow's tasks. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asks eventually, noticing your thoughtful expression. "Spring," you admit, wondering if we should try that new variety of wheat Farmer Morris mentioned. He says, "The yield is better." Emma smiles. "Always looking ahead, aren't you? Winter's barely started and you're already planning for planting." "That's farming for you," you reply with a small shrug, always thinking of the next season. It's true. Despite the hardships, the physical toll, the economic uncertainties, the whims of weather, there's always hope in farming. Each season brings new possibilities, new chances for a better harvest, a better price at market, a step towards security for your family. As the clock strikes 9, you and Emma prepare for bed. The cottage has grown cooler as the range's heat diminishes, and you move quickly to change into nightclothes and slip under the heavy quilts. The bed is cold at first, but your combined body heat soon creates a pocket of warmth. Emma's breathing gradually slows and deepens as she drifts into sleep, her body relaxing after a long day of household labour. You lie awake a bit longer, listening to the wind outside and the occasional creak of the cottage settling. Your mind reviews the day's work and plans for tomorrow. There will be the same morning routine with the animals, but then you need to repair a leak in the barn roof, check on the winter wheat planted in the west field, and perhaps visit the blacksmith in the village about getting new shoes for the horses. The mental checklist is comforting rather than stressful, a way of ordering your world, of breaking the immense task of running a farm into manageable pieces. As your thoughts grow more fragmented and your eyelids heavier, you surrender to sleep, your body grateful for the rest. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and satisfactions, its own mixture of hard work and small joys. Such is the life of an Edwardian farmer, difficult in many ways but rich in others, connected to the land, to the seasons, to the ancient rhythms that have governed rural life for centuries. Despite the changes happening in the wider world, the automobiles, the factories, the shifting politics, here on your small farm, life continues much as it has for generations. And in that continuity, there is profound comfort. Outside, the snow falls silently, covering the fields and farmyard in a clean white blanket. Inside, the farmer sleeps, gathering strength for another day on the land. The first signs of spring come gradually to your Edwardian farm like a slow awakening after the long winter slumber. You notice them in small ways at first, the days stretching longer by increments, the occasional brave bird song piercing the dawn silence, the subtle softening of the frozen ground beneath your boots. These gentle harbingers of change bring a lightness to your step despite the mud that now sucks at your feet where ice once crackled. March arrives with its characteristic unpredictability, alternating between benevolent sunshine and bitter winds that cut through your woolen jacket. But even on the harshest days, there's promise in the air. The ewes in the eastern field have grown heavy with their unborn lambs. Their usually nimble movements now deliberate and slow. You check on them frequently, knowing that lambing season, with its sleepless nights and constant vigilance, is imminent. This morning, you rise even earlier than usual, sensing the changing season in your bones. The bedroom is still cold, but less bitingly so than in the depths of winter. Emma stirs beside you, but doesn't wake as you dress quietly in the dim light. Downstairs, you build up the fire in the range, a task usually done by Emma. It's a small gesture, allowing her a few more precious minutes of sleep before her day of endless household tasks begins. With the range beginning to radiate heat, you step outside into the pre-dawn darkness. The air smells different now. There's moisture in it, and the faint scent of earth emerging from its winter dormancy. Your breath still clouds before you, but the bitter edge of winter has softened. In the barn, the animals sense the changing season too. The cows are more restless during milking, and even the stoic workhorses, Tom and Prince, seem eager to be out of their stalls. Soon they'll be working long days in the fields, their massive shoulders straining against the plough as you prepare the land for planting. As the milk hisses into the pail, creating rhythmic patterns in the frothy surface, you mentally catalogue the tasks awaiting you in the coming weeks. There's the ploughing to be done, the seed to be sown, fences to be checked after winter damage, the vegetable garden to be turned over, fruit trees to be pruned. Spring on a farm means endless work, but it's work filled with purpose and hope, each task an investment in future harvests. By the time you return to the cottage with the morning's milk, the household is awake. The children move about with sleepy faces as Emma prepares porridge, the steam rising from the pot, creating a small cloud in the kitchen. Thomas is already dressed for his morning chores, while Alice helps little Mary button her dress. James sits at the table, his school slate before him, as he practices his letters one last time before breakfast. "Good morning," Emma says, accepting the pails of milk with a smile that doesn't quite hide the shadows of fatigue beneath her eyes. Winter is hard on everyone, but perhaps especially on farm wives who must maintain a household with limited resources while the world outside lies dormant. "I thought I'd take Thomas with me to check the ewes after breakfast," you tell her, warming your hands around the mug of tea she hands you. "There's a few looking ready to drop their lambs any day now." Emma nods, understanding the implications. Lambing means disrupted nights, with you or Thomas making regular trips to the sheep field regardless of weather or hour. It means possibly bringing newborn lambs into the kitchen to warm by the range if they're born in poor conditions. It means all hands needed at odd moments to assist with difficult births. "I'll make sure we've clean cloths ready," she says, already mentally preparing, "and I'll keep water hot on the range." Breakfast is quickly consumed, porridge with a drizzle of precious honey from your own beehives, and thick slices of bread with a scraping of butter. The older children will head to school after their morning chores, but today Thomas will stay home to help with the lambing preparations. After breakfast, you and Thomas walk to the eastern field where the pregnant ewes graze. The morning has brightened now, the sun casting long, pale light across the landscape. Frost still glitters in shaded areas, but where the sun touches, tiny green shoots are beginning to emerge from the soil, the first tentative growth of spring. "What are we looking for, Dad?" Thomas asks, his breath clouding in the cool air. "Signs they're ready to lamb," you explain, pointing to a ewe who's separated herself from the flock. "See how she's off on her own? And she's restless, keeps pawing at the ground. She'll likely lamb today or tonight." Thomas nods, absorbing the knowledge. At 12, he's at an age where he's transitioning from child to worker, especially on a farm where every pair of hands is valuable. You feel a familiar mixture of pride and concern watching him, pride in his growing capability, concern that the hard life of farming is all that awaits him. "Will I need to help with the birthing?" he asks, a touch of apprehension in his voice. "Only if there's trouble," you assure him. "Most ewes manage fine on their own. Our job is mostly watching and waiting, making sure nothing goes wrong." You continue checking each ewe, noting which ones seem closest to giving birth. Thomas follows, asking questions and gradually gaining confidence in his assessments. This passing of knowledge from father to son has occurred on farms for countless generations. A practical education rooted in observation and experience rather than books and classrooms. Back at the farm, there's a myriad of other tasks awaiting. While Thomas heads off to school with his siblings, having helped identify the ewes needing closest attention, you turn to preparing the land for spring planting. The fields that have lain fallow through winter now need the plough to turn the soil, breaking up the compacted earth and bringing nutrients to the surface. You lead Tom and Prince from their stalls, talking to them in low, soothing tones as you harness them to the plough. The leather harness is heavy in your hands, worn smooth from years of use. The horses stand patiently, their massive bodies radiating heat in the cool morning air, their breath forming small clouds around their velvety noses. "Ready for some real work, lads?" you ask, patting Prince's broad neck. The horse whickers softly in response, as if understanding that the easier days of winter are behind them. The weight of the plough handle in your hands is familiar, an extension of your body after years of use. As you guide the horses to the field's edge, you feel a sense of ceremony in this first ploughing of spring, a ritual that connects you to every farmer who has worked this land before. "Walk on," you command, and the horses lean into their collars, their enormous strength making light work of pulling the plough. The metal blade cuts into the earth with a satisfying sound, turning over the soil to expose the dark, rich layers beneath. Behind you stretches a neat furrow, the first of many that will transform this field into a seedbed for wheat. There's an art to ploughing that took you years to master, maintaining the correct depth, creating straight furrows, turning at the field's end without disrupting the pattern. It's physical work that requires constant adjustment of the plough and communication with the horses. Your hands grow calloused from gripping the handles, and your shoulders ache from the consistent pressure. But there's peace in this labour too. The rhythmic pace of the horses, the smell of fresh-turned earth, the gradual transformation of the field, all create a meditative state where your mind can wander while your body performs its well-practiced task. You think about the seeds that will soon be planted here, about the rain and sunshine they'll need to grow, about the harvest that seems so distant now but will arrive all too quickly. By midday, the sun has gained strength, warming your back as you work. You've completed several acres, the neat furrows stretching behind you like corduroy. When Emma appears at the field's edge with a basket over her arm, you're grateful for the break. "Thought you might be ready for some dinner," she calls, using the country term for the midday meal. You guide the horses to the end of the furrow before stopping, giving them a rest while you join Emma under the shade of an old oak tree at the field's edge. She's brought bread, cheese, and cold meat from yesterday's roast, simple fare but welcome after a morning of physical labour. "How's the ploughing coming?" she asks, handing you an earthenware cup of cider from your autumn pressing. "Well enough," you reply, taking a long drink. The cider is cool and refreshing, with just enough tartness to quench your thirst. "Another day should see this field done, then we can start on the north field." Emma nods, her gaze moving over the ploughed sections. She understands farming as well as you do, having grown up on a farm herself. In Edwardian rural communities, a farmer's wife is as much a part of the agricultural enterprise as her husband, though her contributions often take different forms. "I saw Farmer Perkins on my way here," she mentions, referring to your nearest neighbour whose land borders yours to the west. "He's got that new steel plough he was talking about at Christmas. Had it delivered yesterday." You nod, chewing thoughtfully. New farming implements are appearing more frequently now as the manufacturing industry produces more advanced equipment, but such innovations are expensive, beyond the reach of many small farmers like yourself who rent rather than own their land. "How did it look?" you ask, curious despite your skepticism. "Shiny," Emma says with a small smile. "Whether it works better than yours, I couldn't say, but George Perkins was proud as a peacock showing it off." You both laugh softly at the image. Farmer Perkins is known for his enthusiasm for new gadgets and methods, some of which prove worthwhile and others which are quickly abandoned. Well, Tom and Prince don't seem to mind our old plough, you say, glancing at the horses who are contentedly cropping grass at the field's edge, and it's done well enough for us these past years. After eating, you return to the ploughing with renewed energy, while Emma heads back to the cottage to continue her own work, washing clothes, preparing vegetables for dinner, making butter from yesterday's cream, and the 100 other tasks that fill a farm wife's day. The afternoon passes in the steady rhythm of ploughing, the creak of harness leather, the soft grunts of the horses as they pull, the whisper of the blade through soil. The sun moves across the sky, casting your shadow long across the newly turned earth. As evening approaches, you unhitch the horses from the plough, their coats dark with sweat from the day's labour. They've worked well, and you reward them with extra oats when you return them to the barn. A good farmer takes care of his animals. They're not just livestock, but partners in the farm's success. With the horses settled, you turn your attention to the sheep again. In the eastern field, the ewe you noticed this morning has indeed separated herself further from the flock. Her sides heave with contractions, and she paws restlessly at the ground, preparing a spot for birth. You decide to bring her into the barn where you can better monitor her progress and assist if necessary. With Thomas's help, who has returned from school and immediately changed into his work clothes, you gently guide the labouring ewe into a clean stall bedded with fresh straw. "Should we stay with her?" Thomas asks, watching the animal with concern. "We'll check on her regularly," you tell him, "but ewes usually do better without too much fussing. Nature knows its business." Back at the cottage, the evening routine unfolds, washing up at the basin by the door, the family meal around the table, the sharing of the day's events. The younger children chatter about school and friends, while Emma describes her visit to the village where she traded eggs for thread at the general store and heard the latest local news. Mrs. Collins says there's to be a spring fair in the village on Easter Monday, she tells you, as she serves a stew rich with root vegetables from your winter store, with competitions for best livestock and produce. The children immediately begin talking excitedly about the fair, the games, the food, the chance to see friends and neighbours in a festive setting. Rural social life centres around such community events, providing rare opportunities for recreation and connection beyond the daily work of farming. "Can we enter our lambs, Dad?" James asks eagerly. "We'll see," you reply, non-committal but not dismissing the idea. A prize at the fair would bring not just a small monetary reward, but also prestige, potentially increasing the value of your livestock when it comes time to sell. After dinner, while Emma supervises the younger children's preparations for bed, you and Thomas make another trip to the barn to check on the labouring ewe. In the lantern light, you can see she's progressed. The first signs of the lamb are visible now. "Look there," you say quietly to Thomas, pointing. "You can see the front hooves and nose emerging. That's good, means the lamb is positioned correctly." Thomas watches intently as the ewe strains, pushing the lamb further into the world with each contraction. There's no need for your intervention. The birth is proceeding normally. Within 20 minutes, the lamb slides completely free, a wet bundle of spindly legs and matted wool. The ewe immediately begins licking her newborn vigorously, cleaning away the birth fluids and stimulating the lamb's circulation. The lamb, initially motionless, soon begins to twitch and then struggle to rise on wobbly legs. "She knows exactly what to do," Thomas says with wonder in his voice. "Been happening this way since before people were around to watch," you reply, sharing his appreciation for the natural miracle unfolding before you. You stay long enough to ensure the lamb begins nursing, drawing the colostrum-rich first milk that will provide crucial antibodies. Then, satisfied that mother and baby are doing well, you and Thomas head back to the cottage, your breath visible in the cool night air, the stars brilliant overhead in the clear spring sky. The The next few weeks pass in a blur of activity as spring takes hold of the land. Lambing continues, with most births occurring without complications. The fields are ploughed and sown with wheat, barley and oats. In the kitchen garden, Emma plants rows of vegetables, potatoes, carrots, onions, peas and beans that will feed your family through the coming seasons. The orchard trees burst into blossom, their branches thick with white and pink flowers that attract bees from your hives. The sound of buzzing fills the air on sunny days as the industrious insects collect nectar, ensuring both pollination of your fruit trees and honey for your table. The pace of work is relentless, but there's joy in it too, the satisfaction of working in harmony with the seasons, of participating in the ancient cycles of growth and renewal. You rise before dawn and work until dusk, your body aching with honest fatigue at day's end. Market day in the nearby town provides a welcome break from farm routines. Once a month you load a cart with whatever you have to sell: eggs, butter, perhaps a lamb or two, some early vegetables from the kitchen garden. Thomas comes with you, learning the business side of farming, how to assess the quality of livestock, how to negotiate prices, when to hold firm and when to compromise. The market square is bustling with activity, farmers with their produce, craftsmen selling tools and household goods, women with baskets of eggs or homemade preserves, livestock pens hold sheep, cattle and pigs waiting to be sold. The air is filled with the sounds of haggling, the lowing of cattle, the chatter of people catching up on news and gossip. You sell your goods for fair prices, not remarkable but adequate. Like most small farmers in Edwardian England, you operate on narrow margins, vulnerable to fluctuations in market prices and weather conditions. But today has gone well enough, and you allow Thomas to spend a penny on a sweet treat before you head home. On the cart ride back to the farm, with the town receding behind you, Thomas asks a question that's clearly been on his mind. "Dad, do you think I'll be a farmer too when I'm grown?" The question gives you pause. Farming is what you know, what your father taught you as his father taught him. But times are changing, and you're aware that many young people are leaving rural areas for opportunities in towns and cities. Factories offer steady wages without the uncertainties of farming. Offices need clerks who can read and write well, skills that Thomas is developing at school. "Do you want to be a farmer?" you ask, instead of answering directly. Thomas is quiet for a moment, considering. "I like working with the animals," he says finally, "and I like being outside instead of shut up in a classroom all day, but schoolmaster says I have a good head for figures, that I could find work in a bank or an office if I keep at my studies." You nod, feeling a mixture of pride in his abilities and a twinge of sadness at the thought of him leaving the farm. "You've time yet to decide," you tell him, "and whatever you choose, your mother and I will support you." As April gives way to May, the landscape transforms completely. What was barren and dormant just weeks ago now teems with life and colour. The fields are carpeted with new growth, the hedgerows dense with foliage and wildflowers. Lambs frolic in the pastures, their white coats bright against the green grass. The workday starts even earlier now, with the sun rising before 5 o'clock and extends late into the evening. You and Emma work side by side in the kitchen garden, weeding between rows of emerging vegetable shoots. The soil is warm beneath your fingers, alive with worms and beetles that contribute to its fertility. "The peas are coming along nicely," Emma remarks, carefully removing a dandelion from among the seedlings. "We should have fresh ones by June if this weather holds." You agree, your mind half on the garden and half on the fields beyond, where the wheat and barley are sending up tender green shoots. Rain would be welcome soon, though. Ground's getting dry. Emma gives you a knowing look. "Farmers," she says with a gentle tease in her voice, "never satisfied with the weather. Too wet, too dry, too cold, too hot. You smile ruefully, acknowledging the truth in her words. Weather is the farmer's constant preoccupation, the uncontrollable element that can mean the difference between abundance and hardship. As if in answer to your concerns, clouds begin gathering on the western horizon that afternoon. By evening, the sky has darkened, and the air holds the distinctive smell that precedes rainfall. You hurry to complete outdoor tasks before the downpour, ensuring animals have shelter, checking that tools are properly stored, securing anything that might be damaged by water. The rain begins just as darkness falls, a gentle patter on the cottage roof that gradually intensifies. You sit by the range with Emma, darning socks while she mends a tear in James's school shirt. The children are already in bed, lulled to sleep by the rhythmic sound of rain. "Good for the crops," you say, listening to the water drumming on the roof. "Good for the washing too," Emma adds practically. "Rain-caught water is softer than well water. I'll put out the butts tomorrow to catch some for laundry day." This is how decisions are made on your farm, a constant assessment of conditions, adjusting plans to work with rather than against the elements. There's wisdom in this flexibility, this willingness to bend with circumstances rather than break against them. The rain continues through the night and into the next day, a steady, soaking downpour that replenishes the soil without causing flooding. You use the wet day for indoor tasks, repairing harnesses, sharpening tools, sorting through seed packets for the next round of planting. By afternoon, the rain has tapered to a drizzle, and you venture out to check on the livestock. The farm is transformed by the rainfall, the colours more vibrant, the air fresher. Water drips from tree branches and collects in shining puddles that reflect the clearing sky. In the sheep pasture, the lambs seem unperturbed by the dampness, still engaging in their playful jumping and racing. They've grown quickly in just a few weeks, their bodies becoming less fragile, more substantial. By summer's end, some will be ready for market, a thought you push aside for now, focusing instead on their current health and vitality. The vegetable garden has responded well to the rain, the plants standing taller and greener than before. Emma's careful rows of carrots, onions and lettuces glisten with water droplets, promising future harvests for your table. In the fields, the grain crops have also benefited, the young plants drinking deeply of the moisture that will fuel their growth. As you complete your rounds of the farm, checking that all is well after the rainfall, you feel a deep satisfaction that transcends the constant challenges of farming life. This land, these 40 acres that you work but do not own, has become an extension of yourself, responding to your care and attention. The coming months will bring their own demands and rewards. Haymaking in June, harvest in late summer, apple picking in autumn. There will be setbacks and disappointments alongside successes, but for now, in this moment of perfect spring freshness after rain, you allow yourself to simply appreciate the beauty of your surroundings and the privilege of working in partnership with nature. The sun breaks through the clouds as evening approaches, casting golden light across the rain-washed landscape. You pause in your work to watch it set, aware that such moments of stillness are rare in a farmer's life, especially in spring when there's always more to be done than hours to do it. As darkness falls, you make your way back to the cottage where lamplight glows in the windows, where Emma and the children wait, where a simple meal and dry clothes and conversation about the day's events will round out another day on your Edwardian farm. The challenges of agricultural life in a changing economy remain. The competition from foreign imports, the rising costs, the uncertain future. But for now, there is this: land and sky, family and home, the ancient rhythms of rural life continuing despite the march of progress beyond your fields. In the cottage doorway, you pause to look back at your farm, now silvered by emerging moonlight. A fox barks in the distance, an owl calls from the old oak tree, and somewhere in the barn, a lamb bleats softly for its mother. These are the sounds of continuity, of life persisting through seasons and years and generations. You step inside, closing the door on spring darkness, moving toward the warmth and light of home. Summer arrives on your Edwardian farm not with sudden drama, but as a gradual intensification, longer days stretching toward their peak, the strengthening sun warming the soil deep beneath its surface, and the landscape shifting from the bright, tender green of spring to the deeper, more substantial hues of maturity. The pace of farm work, already quickened with spring's demands, accelerates further as the growing season reaches its height. Your days now begin with the first glimmer of dawn around 4 in the morning, and often don't end until twilight fades after 9. These extended hours of daylight are both blessing and challenge, offering more time for necessary tasks but demanding more from your already tired body. Even in your sleep, your muscles remember the day's labour, a constant ache that has become such a familiar companion you hardly notice it anymore. This June morning finds you in the hayfield, scythe in hand, your body falling into the ancient rhythm of the mowing dance. The metal blade whispers through the grass with each swing, laying down neat swathes behind you. Thomas works alongside you, having mastered the technique surprisingly quickly. At 13 now, his birthday having passed in May, he's growing stronger by the week, his movements becoming more assured as he takes on increasingly adult responsibilities. The air is sweet with the scent of cut grass and wildflowers, clover, buttercups and meadowsweet all falling beneath your blades. Bees buzz drowsily from bloom to bloom in the sections not yet cut, their industry matching your own. Sweat trickles down your back, soaking your shirt despite the early hour. By midday, the sun will be fierce, making this morning work especially precious. Mind your swing, you call to Thomas, noticing he's beginning to rush as fatigue sets in. Steady and even saves strength. He nods, adjusting his pace, finding again the rhythm that makes this demanding work sustainable. Haymaking is crucial to your farm's survival. The dried grass will feed your livestock through the coming winter. A poor hay harvest means purchasing expensive feed later, or worse, having to sell animals you'd rather keep. In the distance, you can see your neighbours, the Perkins family, at work in their own hayfield. Their farm is larger than yours, and George Perkins has invested in a horse-drawn mowing machine, a recent innovation that allows him to cut his hay much faster than you can with scythes. The mechanical clatter carries across the fields, a sound both intriguing and slightly threatening to your traditional methods. Perkins's machine is quick, Thomas observes, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow with his sleeve. Aye, it is, you acknowledge, but expensive too, and it doesn't do well on the sloped sections where we're working now. You don't mention your deeper concerns, that such machines represent a future where smaller farms like yours, unable to afford mechanization, might be left behind. Already, the agricultural depression that began in the 1870s has forced many small farmers to abandon their land. Those who remain walk a precarious line between tradition and the pressure to modernize. By mid-morning, Emma and the younger children arrive with refreshments, a stone bottle of cool cider, bread and cheese, and a few early strawberries from the kitchen garden. This brief rest is welcome, a chance to ease the strain in your back and arms before continuing. The field's looking good, Emma says, surveying the cut sections where the grass is already beginning to dry in the sunshine. Weather should hold for drying, according to old Tom at the post office. He says his rheumatism tells him we've 3 clear days ahead. You smile at this traditional forecasting method, though you've noticed old Tom's predictions are often as reliable as the more scientific approaches. In farming, weather law and careful observation of natural signs remain valuable tools alongside newer knowledge. After your brief refreshment, the work continues. Alice and James, home from school for the summer now, join in the labour, using wooden rakes to spread the cut grass more evenly for drying. Even little Mary, now 5, does her part, carrying water to the workers and helping Emma prepare the midday meal that will be brought to the field. The rhythmic nature of haymaking, the swinging of scythes, the turning of hay with rakes, the gathering into piles, creates a meditative state where conversation flows easily despite the physical exertion. Thomas tells you about a book he's borrowed from the schoolmaster, a novel about adventure in foreign lands. James recounts village gossip picked up from his friends. You share stories from your own youth, of haymaking with your father, and the changes you've seen in farming methods over the decades. This oral tradition, knowledge and experience passed through conversation during shared work, has been the way of agricultural communities for centuries, yet you're aware that this too is changing. Printed farming journals now circulate with new scientific approaches to agriculture. The schoolmaster encourages bright village children like Thomas to look beyond the farm for their futures. The continuity you once took for granted feels increasingly uncertain. By evening, a significant portion of the hayfield has been cut, the grass laid out in even rows to dry in tomorrow's sunshine. Your arms ache from the repetitive motion of the scythe, and your shirt is stiff with dried sweat, but there's satisfaction in looking back at the day's progress, at the tangible results of your labour. The walk home is quiet, your family too tired for much conversation. The setting sun casts long shadows across the landscape, turning the remaining standing hay to gold and the cut sections to silver. Swallows dart above the fields, catching insects in the evening air, their aerial acrobatics, a reminder of the natural world's grace that surrounds your working life. Supper is a simple affair. Vegetable soup with dumplings and bread still warm from Emma's baking. Despite your exhaustion, you eat heartily, replenishing the energy spent during the day's work. The children, usually lively at mealtimes, are subdued tonight, the physical demands of haymaking having drained their usual exuberance. Early to bed, Emma announces, seeing eyelids beginning to droop around the table. Tomorrow will be another long day. No one protests, not even Thomas, who has recently begun to assert his approaching adulthood in small acts of independence. Tonight, the wisdom of adequate rest before hard labour is self-evident. Sleep comes quickly, your body surrendering to fatigue as soon as your head touches the pillow. Yet, even in slumber, your farmer's mind remains partly alert, attuned to the possibility of weather changes that might threaten the cut hay lying vulnerable in the fields. The next 3 days follow a similar pattern, rising with the dawn, working through the long daylight hours, falling into exhausted sleep at day's end. The weather holds, allowing the cut hay to dry thoroughly. On the 4th day, you begin the process of gathering it into haystacks, creating the distinctive conical shapes that will dot your fields until the hay is needed in winter. Building a proper haystack is an art form requiring both experience and precision. The hay must be stacked around a central pole, gradually tapering upward to shed rain. Each forkful must be placed just so, creating a structure that will remain stable through autumn storms and winter snow. Thomas and James work alongside you, passing pitchforks of dried grass up to where you stand on the growing stack, carefully arranging each addition. "Pack it tighter there," you instruct Thomas, pointing to a section that seems too loose. "Remember, we want it to shed water, not catch it." The smell of the dried hay is intoxicating, sweet and earthy and reminiscent of sunshine. It clings to your clothing and skin, a pleasant aroma that will linger for days. Bees and butterflies occasionally emerge from the hay as you disturb their temporary resting places, buzzing or fluttering away in search of new shelters. By sunset, 3 substantial haystacks stand in your field, representing security for the coming winter. There's more hay to be cut and dried in the days ahead, but this first successful gathering feels like a significant achievement. As your family walks back to the cottage in the fading light, there's a collective sense of accomplishment despite the bone-deep weariness. The haymaking continues through the following week, interspersed with other essential summer tasks: tending the vegetable garden, checking on the growing grain crops, maintaining the fruit trees in the small orchard. The sheep need shearing too, their heavy winter coats becoming uncomfortable in the summer heat. Shearing day brings its own rhythms and traditions. You set up in the barnyard, with Thomas and James helping to catch and bring each sheep to where you sit with the hand shears. It's skilled work that you learned from your father, requiring both strength and delicacy, removing the wool in one continuous fleece without nicking the sheep's skin. The lanolin from the wool coats your hands, making them soft despite the rigours of farm work. The distinctive smell of sheep, a musky animal scent intensified by summer heat, fills the barnyard. Each animal, relieved of its heavy coat, bounds away looking strangely diminished, almost comical in its nakedness. Emma and Alice gather the fleeces, rolling them properly and storing them in sacks. Later, some will be sold to the wool merchant who travels through the rural districts each summer, while Emma will keep some for spinning during the quieter winter months. The money from the wool sale is modest but welcome, a small addition to the farm's income that might purchase new shoes for the children or replenish household necessities. As June transitions to July, the landscape reaches its full summer abundance. The hedgerows are thick with foliage and wild roses, providing homes for countless birds whose songs form a constant backdrop to your work. The kitchen garden overflows with produce. Peas and beans climbing their supports, carrots and onions swelling beneath the soil, lettuces and cabbages forming tight heads. Emma preserves this bounty through various methods: bottling fruits, making jams, pickling vegetables, drying herbs. The cottage kitchen becomes a processing centre, the range constantly in use despite the summer heat, the air fragrant with vinegar, sugar and spices. These preserved foods will be crucial additions to your winter diet, providing variety and nutrients when fresh produce is scarce. The wheat and barley in your fields have transformed from the tender green shoots of spring to sturdy plants bearing heavy heads of grain, their colour shifting gradually from green to gold as July progresses. You walk the fields regularly, checking for signs of disease or pest damage, estimating the potential yield, offering silent gratitude for what appears to be a promising harvest ahead. Market days continue monthly, providing opportunities to sell excess produce and livestock and to purchase necessities you cannot produce yourself. These trips to town also offer glimpses of the wider world beyond your farm, the fashions of townspeople, the occasional motor car raising dust on the main street, the newspapers with their reports of political developments and international events. It's at the July market that you first hear detailed discussion of a topic that has been mentioned occasionally in recent months: the possibility of war in Europe. Several farmers gather around Perkins, who takes a newspaper and considers himself well informed on political matters. "Germany's building up its navy to rival Britain's," he explains, his expression serious. "And there's all sorts of alliances between different countries, like a pile of kindling just waiting for a spark." You listen with half an ear, more concerned with the immediate realities of your farm than distant international relations. Yet you notice Thomas paying close attention to the conversation, his expression thoughtful. At 13, he's becoming increasingly aware of the world beyond the farm, his horizons expanding through education and natural curiosity. The high point of the summer social calendar is the village fair held in early August, a day when farm work is set aside for community celebration. This year, encouraged by the children's enthusiasm, you decide to enter some of your farm's produce in the competitions. A fleece from your best ewe, some particularly fine carrots from Emma's garden, and a jar of her strawberry preserves. Fair day dawns clear and warm, perfect weather for the outdoor festivities. The family dresses in their Sunday best, clothes reserved for church and special occasions, stored carefully in the cottage's single wardrobe. Emma wears a blouse and skirt in subdued colours. Practical even in her finery, with her hair arranged more elaborately than usual beneath a modest hat. You don your good suit, slightly tight across the shoulders after years of farm work, with a collar that feels constraining after the open necks of work shirts. The children are scrubbed to unprecedented cleanliness, their hair slicked down with water, their faces shining with excitement. Thomas, in particular, seems to have grown overnight, his wrists extending beyond his jacket sleeves, a sign that new clothes will soon be needed, an expense you mentally add to the farm's necessities. The village green has been transformed with bunting and stalls, a small brass band playing cheerful tunes, and various competitions and games arranged around the perimeter. Farmers from throughout the district have brought their best livestock and produce, creating an impressive display of rural productivity. Your family separates upon arrival, drawn to different attractions. Emma takes Mary to admire the handicrafts, quilts, embroidery, knitted items, while James heads straight for the games where village boys are testing their skill at throwing rings over posts. Thomas lingers near a demonstration of a small steam engine, fascinated by the mechanical marvel. You make your way to the livestock pens where sheep, cattle and pigs are being judged. It's an opportunity to assess other farmers' stock, to exchange information about breeding and feeding methods, to maintain the connections that form the backbone of rural community. Fine-looking lambs you've got this year, comments Farmer Wilson, an elderly man who has worked his land for over 5 decades. Good confirmation on that ram lamb particularly. You acknowledge the compliment with a nod, pleased by the recognition from someone whose opinion carries weight in farming circles. Such moments of professional validation are rare but deeply satisfying. The judging proceeds through the morning with good-natured competition and occasional dispute about the decisions. Your fleece receives a commendation, though not a prize, while Emma's strawberry preserves wins second place in their category, earning a small rosette she'll display proudly on the cottage mantelpiece. The highlight of the fair is the communal midday meal, where trestle tables arranged on the green are laden with food contributed by village families. The abundance is impressive. Pies, hams, salads, breads, cakes and puddings, creating a feast that contrasts with the usual simple fare of working days. Your family gathers with neighbours and friends, sharing food and conversation in the August sunshine. The harvest is the main topic of discussion, when it will begin in earnest. Predictions about yields, concerns about weather in the crucial weeks ahead, but there's lighter talk too. Jokes and stories, updates on family members who have moved away, gentle gossip about village affairs. This sense of community, of belonging to a place and its people, is one of the compensations for the hardships of rural life. Despite the economic challenges facing small farmers, despite the uncertainties of agriculture in a changing world, there remains this foundation of shared experience and mutual support. As afternoon progresses, the fair's activities continue with races for children, displays of traditional rural skills, and music for dancing on a wooden platform erected for the occasion. You watch as Thomas awkwardly asks a neighbour's daughter to dance, his face flushed with nerves, taking his first steps into the adult social world. Emma, sitting beside you on a bench in the shade of an old oak tree, follows your gaze and smiles. "He's growing up," she says softly. "They all are." There's a wistfulness in her voice that echoes your own feelings, pride in your children's development mingled with awareness of how quickly childhood passes, especially in rural communities where adult responsibilities come early. The fair continues until evening, concluding with the awarding of the grand prizes for best livestock and produce. As darkness falls, lanterns are lit around the green, creating pools of golden light in which families gather before beginning their journeys home. Your own family walks back to the farm under a sky brilliant with stars, the children tired but happy, carrying their small prizes and treats. The day of leisure has been refreshing, a necessary break from constant labour, but tomorrow the work will resume, the endless cycle of tasks that farming demands. August progresses, the heat sometimes becoming oppressive, particularly during the midday hours. You adjust your working schedule, beginning even earlier, and taking a longer rest during the hottest part of the day before continuing until dusk. The grain in your fields has ripened fully now, the heads heavy and golden, bending slightly under their own weight. Harvest is approaching, the most crucial and demanding period in the farming year. The timing must be perfect, the grain cut when fully ripe but before any storms can damage it. You watch the sky constantly, reading the clouds, feeling the direction of the wind, making daily assessments of the crop's readiness. Unlike some larger farms that have acquired mechanical reapers, your harvest will be done by hand with scythes, the cut grain gathered and bound into sheaves. It's labour-intensive work that will require all hands and likely some hired help from the village. You begin making arrangements, speaking with several men who regularly assist with harvesting, ensuring they'll be available when needed. The evening before harvest begins, there's a heightened energy in the cottage despite physical tiredness. Emma prepares a heartier meal than usual, a rabbit stew with dumplings and vegetables from the garden, followed by a blackberry pudding using fruit the children gathered from the hedgerows. The harvest ahead will demand every ounce of strength your family possesses. Weather looks to hold fair, you observe, glancing out the cottage window at the clear evening sky. We'll start at first light. No one needs to be told the importance of the coming days. The grain harvest represents the culmination of months of work, the farm's primary income source, the difference between modest security and potential hardship in the year ahead. As you sit by the range that evening, mending the leather finger guards used during harvesting to protect against cuts from the sharp grain stalks, you feel the weight of responsibility that comes with farming life. So much depends on factors beyond your control: weather, market prices, the health of crops and livestock. Yet there's deep satisfaction too in this ancient partnership with the land. This participation in cycles of growth and harvest that stretch back through countless generations. Outside, the first crickets of evening begin their rhythmic song. A gentle breeze stirs the curtains at the open window, carrying the scent of ripened grain and summer flowers. Tomorrow will bring intense labour, but tonight there is this moment of anticipation, of readiness, of connection to the timeless patterns of agricultural life. You complete the mending and set the leather guards aside, ready for morning use. Emma has finished her preparations too. Food packed for midday refreshment in the fields, water bottles filled, extra bandages ready for inevitable small injuries. The children have already gone up to bed, needing rest before the demanding days ahead. You and Emma sit quietly together for a few moments, enjoying the rare stillness, the brief interlude between the labours of cultivation and the intensity of harvest. It's been a good summer, Emma says softly, her hands finally still in her lap after a day of constant activity. It has, you agree, thinking of the healthy livestock, the productive garden, the promising grain crops waiting to be harvested. We've been fortunate. In this acknowledgement lies a farmer's perpetual awareness that good fortune can change quickly, that next year might bring drought or disease or falling prices, but there's no point dwelling on potential difficulties. For now, there is this, the satisfaction of a summer well worked, the anticipation of harvest, the gentle companionship of decades shared with the woman beside you. As you bank the fire for the night and prepare for bed, you take a moment to step outside into the darkness. The night air is cooler now, hinting at the autumn that will follow harvest. Stars crowd the sky above your farm, the same stars that have guided agricultural work since humans first began cultivating the land. Tomorrow the scythes will swing, the grain will fall, the great work of gathering will begin. But for this moment, standing in the stillness of a summer night, you simply exist in the perfect intersection of past, present, and future that farming represents. Honouring ancient knowledge, attending to current needs, preparing always for seasons yet to come. With this thought, you return inside to rest, gathering strength for the harvest dawn. Harvest dawn arrives with a particular quality of light, golden, expectant, almost reverent. You rise in darkness, but by the time you step outside, the eastern sky has brightened to a luminous peach colour that gradually deepens to blue overhead. Dew lies heavy on the grass, soaking your boots as you cross the farmyard. The air is perfectly still, holding its breath for the momentous work ahead. The tools of harvest wait ready in the barn, scythes freshly sharpened, their blades gleaming, wooden rakes with smooth worn handles, canvas sheets for collecting grain, leather finger guards to protect against cuts. Your family gathers silently, everyone aware of the gravity of the day. Even little Mary, at 5, understands that harvest is different from ordinary farm work. It is the culmination of the year's efforts, the realization of hopes planted months ago. Thomas and James carry the scythes, while you shoulder a water barrel that will be positioned at the field's edge. Emma and Alice follow with baskets containing food for the day: bread, cheese, cold meat, apples, and bottles of home-brewed small beer, less potent than regular ale and suitable for quenching thirst during labour. The wheat field glows in the early light, the golden grain heads heavy with ripeness, occasionally stirring in the faintest breath of breeze. It's a beautiful sight, the physical manifestation of countless hours of ploughing, sowing, and tending. You pause at the field's edge, taking a moment to appreciate both the beauty and the bounty before the cutting begins. A good stand, observes Thomas, his eyes scanning the field with the evaluating gaze of a farmer rather than a boy. Heads are full. You nod agreement, feeling a surge of pride in both the crop and your son's developing agricultural judgment. Though still young, Thomas increasingly thinks like a farmer, noticing the details that determine success or failure in this demanding profession. The villagers who have come to help with the harvest arrive as the sun clears the horizon. 4 men and 2 older boys, all experienced in the work ahead. There are fewer helpers than in your father's day, when harvest was an all-community affair. Many have left for factory jobs in towns. lured by regular wages and shorter working hours. Those who remain command higher pay for their harvest labour, another economic pressure on small farms like yours. Still, there's a certain ceremony to the beginning of harvest that harkens back through generations. The men nod respectfully as they approach, examining the crop with appreciative eyes. Greetings are exchanged, brief and to the point. This is not a day for lengthy conversation. The work itself will command all attention. Ready then? You ask, though the question is largely symbolic. Everyone knows what must be done. The men position themselves along the field's edge, scythes ready. You take your place among them, with Thomas beside you learning the rhythm. The oldest man, Walter Green, who has participated in more harvests than anyone present, makes the first cut, a tradition-honouring experience. The scything begins in earnest then, the blades swinging in synchronized arcs, cutting through the wheat stalks with a satisfying swish. The work requires skill developed over years of practice, maintaining the correct angle of the blade, achieving the right depth of cut, establishing a sustainable rhythm that conserves energy while maximizing efficiency. Behind the line of men with scythes come the gatherers, Emma, Alice, James and the women and younger children from the village, collecting the cut stalks into bundles that will be bound into sheaves. This too is skilled work, requiring precise amounts of grain to make sheaves that are neither too large to handle nor too small to be efficient. The sun climbs higher as the morning progresses, its heat intensifying. Sweat soaks through shirts and blouses, runs down faces, stings eyes. The leather finger guards protect against the sharp edges of the wheat stalks, but nothing prevents the inevitable scratches on arms and necks. The chaff that works its way into clothing, the dust that coats skin and fills lungs. Yet there's a strange satisfaction in this demanding labour, a sense of participating in something essential and ancient. The movements of harvest have been performed on this land for centuries, perhaps millennia, though technologies change. Your father spoke of seeing the first mechanical reapers, and now some larger farms use steam-powered threshing machines. The fundamental act of gathering food from the earth remains a constant human experience. By mid-morning, when you pause briefly for a drink of water, a significant portion of the field has been cut. The sheaves stand in upright clusters, their golden tops catching the sunlight. Birds dart among the remaining standing wheat, feasting on insects disturbed by your activity. Occasionally, a rabbit or field mouse bolts from cover, startled by the advancing line of harvesters. "Looks to be yielding well," comments Walter, wiping his brow with a faded handkerchief. "Better than last year, I'd say." You agree, though privately you're calculating how much of this harvest must go to pay the rent on your land, how much to set aside for seed for next year, how much can be sold at market. The economics of small farming grow more precarious each year, with prices depressed by foreign imports, and costs rising for everything from tools to household necessities. The midday meal provides a welcome respite from labour. Everyone gathers in the shade of a large oak at the field's edge, gratefully accepting the food and drink Emma and the village women distribute. Conversation remains minimal. Energy must be conserved for the afternoon's work ahead. Instead, there's the sound of hearty eating, occasional appreciative comments about the food and the distant singing of larks high above the fields. Thomas sits beside you, his young face already showing lines of fatigue, though he'd never complain. You notice how his hands, once small and smooth, have begun to develop the calluses and weathered appearance of a working man's. Childhood in rural communities is shorter than in towns, or among the wealthy. The necessities of farm work ensure that. "You're doing well," you tell him quietly, a rare verbal acknowledgement of his efforts. "Your swing is improving." He straightens slightly at the praise, a small smile appearing despite his tiredness. "I've been watching how Walter does it," he admits. "He barely seems to use any strength, but cuts more than anyone." You nod, pleased by his observation. That's the secret of it. Technique over force. A lesson for more than just harvesting. The brief rest concludes, and work resumes with the sun now high overhead, its heat unrelenting. The pace slows slightly as fatigue builds, but no one suggests stopping. Harvest waits for no one. The weather could change tomorrow, and rain on ripe grain can spell disaster, causing it to sprout in the field or develop mold that ruins its value. The methodical progress continues through the afternoon. Cut, gather, bind, cut, gather, bind. The human machinery of harvest advancing steadily across the field. Occasionally, someone begins a traditional harvesting song and others join in, the melody and rhythm helping to maintain momentum as muscles tire and the sun beats down. These harvest songs, passed down through generations, tell stories of rural life, of courtship and marriage, of the turning seasons. Some are centuries old, their origins lost in time, yet they remain vibrant in this context, serving both as entertainment and as practical aids to coordinated labour. By evening, when the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the remaining uncut wheat, approximately half the field has been harvested. It's good progress, though another full day of work lies ahead. The sheaves stand in ordered rows like sentinels, testifying to the day's accomplishment. The workers gather their tools as dusk approaches, muscles aching, hands blistered despite calluses and protective guards. There's little conversation as the group walks back to the farm, fatigue having claimed all spare energy. Yet beneath the exhaustion runs a current of satisfaction. The first day of harvest completed successfully, the weather holding fair, the crop proving abundant. At the farmyard, water is drawn from the well for washing, a luxury particularly appreciated after a day of dust and chaff. The helpers from the village depart for their homes, planning to return at dawn. Your family makes its way to the cottage, where Emma has somehow found energy to prepare a hearty supper despite her own day of labour in the fields. "You should rest," you tell her, seeing the weariness in her face as she moves about the kitchen. She dismisses the suggestion with a small shake of her head. "There's hunger to attend to first," she says practically. "Rest comes later." The meal is simple but filling, a stew that's been simmering slowly all day, requiring minimal attention, and fresh bread baked early that morning before the harvest began. The children eat with unusual quietness, their normal chatter subdued by tiredness. Even Mary, who spent the day helping in small ways appropriate to her age, has dirt smudges on her face and drooping eyelids. After eating, there's only energy for essential preparations for the next day, checking tools, setting out clothes, ensuring water barrels are filled. By the time darkness falls completely, the entire household has surrendered to sleep, bodies recovering for tomorrow's continuation of the harvest. The following 3 days follow a similar pattern, rising before dawn, working through the daylight hours, returning exhausted at dusk. The wheat field is completely harvested, followed by the smaller barley field. The weather remains favourable, allowing the cut grain to dry properly before being gathered and stacked. The next phase of harvest involves transporting the sheaves to the barn for threshing, the separation of grain from stalks. In earlier times, and still on some farms, this would be done by hand with flails, a laborious process of beating the dried wheat to release the kernels. But even your modest farm has adopted the use of a communal threshing machine that travels between local farms during harvest season. The machine arrives drawn by a steam traction engine, a massive, intimidating contraption of metal and power that represents the industrialization gradually transforming agriculture. The engine driver, blackened with coal dust and oil, has the confident demeanor of a specialist, a man whose technical knowledge sets him apart from traditional farm workers. "Morning," he nods, expertly maneuvering the engine into position near your barn. "Looks a good crop you've got." The threshing machine is positioned carefully, belts connected to the steam engine that will power it. The process requires coordination and specialized roles, feeding sheaves into the machine, managing the straw output, bagging the separated grain, maintaining the engine's fire and pressure. You organize your family and several village helpers around the machine, assigning tasks according to strength and experience. Thomas works alongside you, feeding sheaves into the thresher's hungry maw, while Emma and Alice manage the collection of grain into sacks. James keeps the younger children away from the dangerous moving parts while still allowing them to observe this exciting annual event. The noise is tremendous once the machine begins operation. The hissing of steam, the clattering of metal mechanisms, the rumble of turning wheels and shafts. Conversation becomes impossible, except through shouted fragments and hand gestures. The air fills with dust and chaff that coats everything and everyone, working its way into clothing, hair, even eyelashes, despite scarves tied over noses and mouths for protection. Yet there's an undeniable efficiency to the process. What would take weeks of hand threshing is accomplished in a day. By sunset, your entire harvest has been processed. The grain safely stored in sacks in the barn, the straw stacked for winter animal bedding, the chaff collected for various farm uses. The engine driver and his assistant are paid from precious farm funds, another expense in the complex economics of agriculture. But the time saved justifies the cost, allowing you to move more quickly to other pressing autumn tasks. After the intensity of grain harvest comes the gathering of orchard fruits, apples and pears from the small cluster of trees near the cottage. This is lighter work, but still time-sensitive, as windfalls must be collected promptly before they spoil, and the best fruit picked at perfect ripeness. Emma orchestrates this harvest, directing the children in careful picking and sorting. The finest apples and pears will be stored in the cool darkness of the root cellar, laid out on straw-covered shelves where they'll keep through winter. Others will be preserved as jam or sauce, dried in slices, or pressed for cider. The apple pressing is a festive occasion, less pressured than grain harvest, though no less important to the farm's self-sufficiency. You set up the wooden press in the farmyard, a hefty contraption of beam and screw that squeezes juice from pulped fruit. The children take turns cranking the mechanism, delighting in the streams of sweet juice that flow into waiting buckets. Some of this juice will be consumed fresh, a rare treat. Most will ferment in barrels over the coming months, transforming into cider of varying strengths, from mild scrumpy for everyday drinking to stronger brews reserved for special occasions. In rural Devon, cider is more than just a beverage. It's a cultural tradition, a social lubricant, and for many farm families, a safer alternative to potentially contaminated water. As September progresses toward October, the landscape begins its autumn transformation. The wheat and barley stubble in the harvested fields glows golden in the increasingly slanted sunlight. Hedgerows blaze with berries, sloes, blackberries, rosehips, hawthorn, providing food for birds and opportunities for foraging. Trees at the farm's boundaries show hints of yellow and red among their green leaves. The pace of work shifts after the main harvest, but doesn't slacken. There's the potato crop to dig, a family affair with everyone from oldest to youngest participating. Unlike grain farming, which has seen increasing mechanization, potato harvesting remains stubbornly manual on small farms, requiring backs bent and hands in soil, searching for the earth's buried treasures. You work your way methodically along the rows, using a fork to loosen the soil, then searching through the dirt for the tan-coloured tubers. Thomas and James compete to find the largest potato, holding up impressive specimens for comparison, while Mary delights in discovering tiny baby potatoes overlooked during the main harvest. The potatoes are sorted as they're gathered, the largest and most perfect for storage, medium-sized for immediate use, damaged ones for prompt consumption, and the smallest for replanting next spring. By day's end, several sacks stand filled, representing a crucial component of your family's winter sustenance. The root vegetables follow: carrots, parsnips and turnips pulled from the soil and topped, their leafy greens fed to livestock. Onions and garlic are harvested and hung in net bags from barn rafters to dry. Pumpkins and squashes are cut with their stems intact to improve storage life, then arranged on shelves in the cool pantry. Emma's careful garden planning ensures a succession of vegetables well into autumn: late cabbages, Brussels sprouts that improve with frost, leeks that will stand in the ground through winter, kale that provides green leaves when little else grows. This garden productivity, often overlooked in calculations of farm output, is vital to your family's nutrition and economy. With the main harvests complete, attention turns to preparing the land for next year's crops. The wheat and barley fields must be ploughed again, turning under the stubble to decompose and enrich the soil. It's heavy work, guiding the plough behind Tom and Prince as they strain against the compacted earth. But there's satisfaction in the clean furrows left behind, in the earthy smell of freshly turned soil, in the resourceful rooks that follow the plough to feast on exposed worms and grubs. Thomas often works alongside you now, his school attendance becoming more sporadic as farm needs take precedence. The rural education authorities turn a blind eye to this seasonal truancy, understanding the economic necessities of farming families. Still, you ensure he attends school at least 2 days each week, aware that his future might require different skills than those you can teach him. October brings the first frosts, morning whiteness that melts by midday but signals the advancing season. The livestock must be prepared for winter. Decisions made about which animals to keep and which to sell, feeding regimes adjusted, shelters repaired before serious weather arrives. The annual cycle of farm life is reflected in the pig that was born last spring and has been fattened through summer and autumn. Now, with cold weather approaching, comes slaughtering time, a necessary process that provides meat for winter months. It's not a task you enjoy, but one performed with respect and efficiency, acknowledging the animal's contribution to your family's survival. Nothing is wasted, the blood collected for black pudding, the fat rendered into lard for cooking and soap making, the meat variously prepared as fresh cuts, sausages, bacon and ham. Emma manages this complex transformation, her knowledge of preservation techniques ensuring the meat will last through winter and beyond. The slaughtering and meat processing draws neighbouring families who help with the work in exchange for small portions of the results. This reciprocal assistance is part of rural community life. Today you help with a neighbour's pig, tomorrow they'll assist with yours. In a cash-poor economy, such exchanges of labour and goods remain essential to survival. As October yields to November, the farm's focus increasingly turns inward. Fields lie fallow or contain overwintering crops that need minimal attention. Livestock require regular feeding and monitoring, but less active management than during spring and summer. The shortened days limit outdoor work hours, creating space for indoor tasks postponed during busier seasons. the cottage becomes a centre of activity, repairs to tools and equipment, mending of clothes and household linens, construction or improvement of necessary items from furniture to baskets. Your skills as a woodworker, developed through years of necessity, find expression in the creation of a new chair to replace one that collapsed under the weight of a harvest worker. Emma and Alice work at the spinning wheel, transforming sheep's wool into yarn that will later become socks, scarves, and jerseys. James practices his whittling, creating simple toys and useful small items under your guidance. Even Mary contributes, sorting beans harvested in their dried state for winter soups and stews. The evenings lengthen with darkness falling by mid-afternoon. Lamplight creates a golden glow within the cottage, oil carefully rationed but sufficient to allow for reading, sewing, and family conversation. Thomas often has his head in a book borrowed from the schoolmaster. Tales of adventure in distant lands, or increasingly practical information about modern farming methods. On particularly cold evenings, neighbours sometimes gather in each other's homes for companionship and entertainment. No formal invitations are issued. The smoke from a well-stoked chimney and lamplight in windows signal welcome. These impromptu gatherings feature storytelling, music from anyone who plays an instrument, and discussions of farming matters, local news, and occasionally the wider world. Politics enters these conversations more frequently now, with talk of potential war in Europe, of workers' movements in industrial areas, of women campaigning for voting rights. The isolation of rural communities is lessening as newspapers reach even remote villages, as some farms acquire telephones, as motor vehicles increasingly appear on country roads. You listen more than you speak during these discussions, considering how these distant developments might eventually affect your small corner of Devon. The threats seem abstract compared to immediate farming concerns, yet you're aware that changes in the wider world inevitably reach even the most traditional communities. The first significant storm of autumn arrives in mid-November, a howling gale that sweeps in from the Atlantic, bringing lashing rain and winds that test the soundness of buildings and the security of livestock shelters. You rise several times during the night to check on animals, returning to the cottage soaked despite oilskin coverings. The storm continues through the following day, keeping the family largely confined indoors except for essential trips to tend animals. The cottage feels particularly snug in such weather, the thick stone walls muffling the worst of the wind's noise, the range providing steady heat, the roof recently repaired, keeping out all but a few persistent drips that are caught in strategically placed buckets. Good job we got the harvest in when we did, Thomas observes, glancing out the window at rain falling in nearly horizontal sheets. Would have been ruined now. You nod agreement, grateful for the timing that allowed your crops to be safely gathered before such weather arrived. Farming success depends on many factors outside human control, but experience helps in making the crucial timing decisions that can spell the difference between sufficient yield and disaster. When the storm finally passes, you emerge to assess damage. A few roof slates dislodged from outbuildings, a section of fence blown down, branches scattered across the farmyard. The repairs add to your workload but represent nothing catastrophic. Other farmers in the district fared worse, with reports of a barn roof entirely gone on one property and several sheep lost to flooding on another. As November advances, preparations for winter intensify. Firewood must be cut and stacked, enough to last through the coldest months when the range will burn continuously. The root cellar is organised for maximum efficiency, with stored vegetables arranged for ease of access and to prevent premature spoilage. The cottage itself receives attention. Extra straw stuffed into mattresses for warmth, gaps around windows and doors plugged with cloth, the chimney swept to prevent dangerous build-up of soot. With the approach of December comes one of the farm year's final harvests, the slaughtering of a fat lamb for the Christmas meal. Like the pig slaughter, it's a necessary task performed with respect for the animal's sacrifice. This particular lamb, selected months earlier for its robust health, will provide the centerpiece for the most significant feast of the year. The shorter days and inclement weather create more time for family togetherness in the evenings. You sometimes read aloud from the newspaper or from books borrowed from the village library, a recently established institution housed in a single bookcase in the church vestry, but nonetheless treasured by the community. Emma works on special projects for Christmas, knitted gifts for the children, small luxuries like plum pudding and mince pies that require precious ingredients saved throughout the year. The children craft simple presents for each other, and for you and Emma, carved wooden animals from James, lavender sachets sewn by Alice, drawings from Mary. Thomas seems increasingly drawn to the mechanical aspects of farming, poring over catalogue illustrations of new equipment, asking detailed questions about how things work. When a representative from an agricultural machinery company visits the district, Thomas persuades you to attend the demonstration of a new small tractor designed for farms of modest size. The machine is impressive, capable of ploughing an acre in the time it would take your horses to complete half that area. But the price is prohibitive for a tenant farmer with narrow margins, and you leave the demonstration with mixed feelings, appreciation for the technology, but concern about a future where such machines might become necessities rather than luxuries. We could save for one, Thomas suggests on the walk home, his expression hopeful. Put aside a little each year. Perhaps, you reply, not wanting to discourage him yet aware of the economic realities. But there's value in the old ways too. Horses don't need petrol, and they produce foals rather than requiring spare parts. The conversation highlights the tension experienced by many small farmers in this period of transition, the pull of innovation against the security of traditional methods, the desire for increased efficiency against the constraints of limited capital. As autumn deepens toward winter, the landscape around the farm grows increasingly stark. The deciduous trees stand bare, their complex branch structures revealed against grey skies. Morning frosts transform the fields into glittering expanses that crunch underfoot. The air carries the distinctive scent of wood smoke from cottage chimneys, of damp earth, of approaching winter. Farm life contracts during this season focused more on maintenance than growth, on preservation rather than production. The work is less physically demanding than during spring and summer, but requires careful management of resources. Winter is a time of taking stock, of planning for the year ahead, of measuring stores against needs and calculating what must be purchased, what can be stretched, what might be bartered with neighbours. On clear days, you walk the boundaries of your farm, checking fences, noting areas that will need attention when weather permits, observing the condition of fields and livestock. These walks provide time for reflection, for considering the farm's future and your family's place within it. The land sleeps now, gathering strength beneath its winter covering, but your farmer's mind remains active, planning crop rotations, considering livestock breeding decisions, calculating financial needs and potential income sources. Farming is never simply about the present moment, but always extends backward into inherited knowledge and forward into anticipated seasons. As December arrives, bringing the farm year full circle, you find yourself in the curious position of simultaneously looking back at the completed cycle and forward to the one about to begin. There have been successes and disappointments, as in every farming year. Some crops performed better than expected, others worse. Some animals thrived, others required more care than anticipated. The economic calculations balanced in some areas and fell short in others. Yet the farm continues, adapting to changing conditions, absorbing new knowledge while honouring traditional practices, supporting your family through another year of this challenging but rewarding way of life. And as the shortest day approaches, bringing the promise of gradually lengthening light to follow, there is quiet hope for the cycles yet to come. The Edwardian era represents a pivotal moment in agricultural history, poised between centuries-old practices and modern innovations, between the rhythms of nature and the efficiencies of mechanization. Your small Devon farm embodies this transition, neither fully traditional nor entirely modernized, but finding its way through the economic and social changes reshaping rural England. In the cottage on a December evening, with darkness fallen early and the range providing steady warmth, your family gathers in the lamplight, Emma sewing, the children engaged in quiet activities, you repairing a broken tool handle. Outside, the first snowflakes of winter begin to fall, dusting the farmyard with white. Inside, there is shelter, sustenance, and the deep security of knowing that despite all challenges, you have once again completed the ancient human task of coaxing food from the earth, of participating in the fundamental cycles that sustain life. It is enough. It has always been enough. And for tonight, as the snow falls silently and your family rests secure, the complexities of agricultural economics, the uncertainties of changing times, the hardships of farming life, all recede into the background, leaving only this moment of completion, of quiet satisfaction in work well done. Tomorrow will bring its own tasks and challenges, but tonight, in the gentle stillness of early winter, the farm and its people rest, gathering strength for the seasons to come. Winter descends upon your Edwardian farm not as a sudden event, but as a gradual deepening, daylight hours shrinking incrementally, the sun's arc lowering across the southern sky, temperatures dropping by small degrees until breath clouds before you even in the cottage. The land transitions into its resting phase, a necessary dormancy after the exertions of growth and harvest. December mornings begin in profound darkness. You rise by lamplight, dressing quickly in the chill bedroom, adding layers of clothing against the cold, woolen undergarments, thick corduroy trousers, flannel shirt, waistcoat, jacket. Your body has adapted to the seasonal rhythm, instinctively conserving energy, moving more deliberately than during summer's expansive days. Outside, the pre-dawn farmyard lies silent except for the crunch of frost beneath your boots. The air has a crystalline quality, sharp in your lungs, carrying the sense of wood smoke, damp earth, and the distinctive mineral smell of impending snow. Stars still gleam overhead, winter constellations wheeling slowly above your small corner of Devon. The animals require attention regardless of weather. Cows to be milked, horses, sheep and pigs to be fed and watered, chickens to be tended. Their breath forms small clouds in the cold barn air as they shuffle and snort in greeting. The livestock's body heat creates pockets of warmth in the buildings, a blessing as you work with increasingly stiff fingers. "Morning, Tom, morning, Prince," you murmur to the heavy workhorses who push their velvet noses against your chest in familiar greeting. Their workload is lighter in winter, but they still need daily care, fresh bedding, regular grooming, attention to hooves that can develop problems during extended stable confinement. The cows stand patiently for milking, their production reduced from summer peaks but still providing the daily milk necessary for your family and for making butter and cheese. The milk steams slightly as it hits the pail, warm from the animal's body. Your hands, initially cold, gradually warm with the repetitive work and the contact with the cow's flank. By the time you return to the cottage with the morning's milk, Emma has the range fire burning strongly, its heat beginning to permeate the downstairs rooms. The cottage windows glow with lamplight in the persistent darkness, a beacon of warmth and shelter against winter's austerity. Inside, the morning routine unfolds. Breakfast preparation, children rising reluctantly from warm beds to wash at the basin of heated water, the family gathering around the table for porridge made more substantial with dried fruits preserved from autumn's bounty. There's less variety in winter meals, more reliance on stored provisions, but Emma's careful planning ensures adequate nutrition despite seasonal limitations. Snow's coming, you observe, glancing at the leaden sky visible through the cottage window. Heavy clouds moving in from the east. Emma nods, mentally calculating what preparations might be needed. Extra feed brought closer to animal shelters, water pipes wrapped against freezing, paths cleared between essential buildings. A significant snowfall creates beauty but also challenges, particularly on a farm where daily tasks cannot be postponed regardless of weather. The children prepare for school, bundled in layers of clothing, scarves wound high around their faces so only their eyes remain visible. Alice helps little Mary with her mittens, ensuring no gap exists between sleeve and hand covering. Thomas and James check that their slate boards and chalk are securely wrapped against moisture. Mind you come straight home if the snow starts heavy, Emma instructs as they prepare to leave. No dawdling. The children's breath clouds around them as they set off down the lane toward the village school, small figures gradually disappearing into the grey landscape. In severe weather, they might stay home, but education has gained importance even in rural communities. The school attendance officer is more understanding of occasional absences during harvest than of children kept home merely for cold or snow. With the children gone, you and Emma turn to winter's work, different from summer's frenetic pace, but no less essential to the farm's functioning. There are repairs to buildings and equipment, maintenance tasks postponed during busier seasons, preparations for spring that seem distant now but will arrive with surprising speed. Today, you're working in the barn, mending harnesses and other leather equipment, replacing worn straps, oiling the leather to keep it supple, checking buckles and fasteners for security. It's detailed work requiring patience and skill, best done in winter when other demands are fewer. The barn provides shelter from the elements while still allowing sufficient light through its small windows for close work. Emma has her own tasks, washing clothes despite the challenge of drying them in winter dampness, preserving the last of the autumn vegetables, preparing wool for spinning during evening hours by the fire. The rhythm of housekeeping continues through all seasons, adapting to changing conditions but never ceasing entirely. By midday, the predicted snow begins, fat flakes drifting lazily at first, then gradually increasing in intensity, driven by a strengthening east wind. You finish securing the animals with extra bedding and food, ensuring water sources won't freeze entirely, checking that all buildings are properly closed against the weather. The children arrive home early, their cheeks reddened by cold, excitement in their voices as they describe the intensifying snowfall during their walk from school. They've been released ahead of the usual time, the schoolmaster wisely allowing rural students to reach home before conditions worsen. "It's coming down heavy now," reports Thomas, stamping snow from his boots at the door. "Nearly up to our ankles on the lane already." By evening, the landscape has transformed. Familiar contours softened under white covering, boundaries blurred, the ordinary farm rendered mysterious and new. The snow continues through the night, accumulating to impressive depth by morning, creating drifts against buildings and hedgerows, transforming the farmyard into an obstacle course requiring careful navigation. Farm work becomes more challenging in such conditions. Paths must be cleared to essential buildings, ice broken on water troughs, animals checked more frequently for signs of cold stress. Even simple tasks take longer, require more energy, present unexpected difficulties. Yet, there's beauty too in this winter landscape. Pristine whiteness catching dawn light, icicles forming crystalline decorations along roof edges, animal tracks telling stories of nocturnal movements across the snow-covered yard. The children, freed from school by the weather, help with clearing paths, their energy finding productive outlet in shoveling snow and carrying feed to animals. Between work sessions, they engage in winter play, building a snow figure in the farmyard, sliding down the gentle slope behind the barn on a piece of scrap wood polished smooth by previous generations of farm children. These snow days create a curious suspension of ordinary time, a period when usual routines yield to weather's dictates, when the household turns inward, becoming more self-contained than usual. Meals are taken leisurely, stories shared, games played in the evening lamplight. There's an intimacy to these weather-bound days, a closeness born of shared space and shared experience. The Christmas season approaches, bringing its own rhythms and traditions to the farm. Unlike wealthy urban households with their elaborate decorations and purchased gifts, your rural Christmas celebrations remain connected to older customs. Simple decorations of evergreen boughs brought in from the farm boundaries, handmade gifts, food prepared from preserved harvest bounty. Emma creates small treats that represent significant luxury in your careful household economy. Mince pies with precious dried fruits and spices, a Christmas pudding that has been aging since its preparation weeks earlier, gingerbread figures for the children flavoured with expensive imported ginger reserved for this special occasion. You contribute by selecting and cutting the Christmas tree, a small fir from the copse at the farm's edge, carried home on your shoulder through the snow. The children decorate it with treasured ornaments stored carefully from year to year, supplemented by new creations made from painted pine cones, paper chains, and strings of dried berries. On Christmas Eve, the cottage glows with unusual brightness, extra candles lit to celebrate the season, the range fire built higher than normal, lanterns positioned to illuminate the modest decorations. The family gathers for a special meal featuring the lamb slaughtered earlier for this purpose, followed by the eagerly anticipated pudding carried to the table wreathed in blue flames from the brandy Emma has poured over it, a dramatic moment in an otherwise untheatrical rural existence. After the meal comes the exchange of gifts, practical items made meaningful by the thought and labour invested in their creation. Thomas receives a new knife for his farm work, crafted by the village blacksmith. Alice unwraps a length of ribbon for her hair, a small, feminine luxury in her practical life. James exclaims over the wooden farm animals you've carved during evening hours throughout autumn. Mary clutches a rag doll Emma has fashioned, with real wool yarn for hair and a carefully embroidered face. Your own gift from Emma is a new woolen scarf, her evenings of spinning and knitting now revealed as preparation for this moment. You present her with a carved wooden box for her sewing implements, created in similar secret evening sessions. These exchanges represent not financial extravagance, but the currency of time and attention, of understanding what would bring genuine pleasure to each family member. Later, if weather permits, you'll attend the Christmas service at the village church, joining neighbours in celebration, the familiar farming community gathered in shared observance regardless of varying degrees of religious devotion. The church, ancient stone warmed by candlelight, provides a setting for both spiritual reflection and social connection, the congregation's voices raised together in carols that have echoed through this building for generations. The days between Christmas and New Year bring a welcome lull in farm activities, a brief respite when only essential tasks are performed, when visiting between neighbouring farms increases, when the year's end invites reflection and the coming year's beginning prompts planning. This particular turning of the year, 1907 to 1908, feels significant in ways you can't entirely articulate. The world beyond your farm boundaries changes with increasing speed, automobiles appearing occasionally on country roads, telephone wires stretching toward larger villages, if not yet reaching yours, newspapers reporting political developments that seem both distant and potentially momentous. You discuss some of these changes with George Perkins when his family visits on Boxing Day, the conversation turning as it often does to farming's future. Perkins, always eager to embrace new methods, speaks enthusiastically about mechanical innovations, about scientific approaches to agriculture featured in farming journals. "Mark my words," he says, warming to his subject, "in 20 years, you won't see a horse-drawn plough in these parts. It'll all be tractors and engines." You're less convinced, aware of the economic barriers preventing small tenant farmers from adopting expensive equipment, cognizant of the skills and knowledge accumulated through traditional methods that might be lost in rapid transition. Yet you can't dismiss his predictions entirely, having witnessed enough change already to recognize the inevitable momentum of modernization. As January arrives, bringing the coldest period of winter, the farm settles into its most contracted state. Activities limited by weather, by shortened daylight, by the land's dormancy. Yet essential work continues. Care of livestock whose needs never pause. Maintenance of equipment and buildings, planning for spring planting that will arrive sooner than seems possible from the perspective of midwinter. The cold intensifies, bringing mornings when water buckets freeze solid overnight, when breath crystallizes instantly in the frigid air, when fingers and toes ache despite layers of protection. Such weather tests both human endurance and farm infrastructure. Pipes freeze, animals require extra feed to maintain body heat, buildings reveal previously unnoticed drafts and leaks. Your family adapts to these conditions as farming families have for centuries, rising earlier to allow time for winter-specific challenges, wearing multiple layers of clothing, concentrating activities in the cottage's warmest areas, going to bed early to conserve lamp oil, and to spend fewer waking hours in the cold. The children continue attending school when weather permits, returning with red cheeks and tales of frozen inkwells in the schoolroom, of the schoolmaster's battle to maintain adequate heating with limited coal supplies, of games played in the playground designed to keep moving and thus stay warm. Thomas, now 13 and increasingly mature in his thinking, raises the subject of his future one evening as you sit by the range fire mending a broken tool handle. The firelight catches the serious expression on his young face, highlighting the gradual transition from boy to man occurring before your eyes. "Schoolmaster says I have a good head for figures," he begins, his tone deliberately casual, though you sense the importance of the conversation to him. "Says I might do well in an office job, or perhaps at the bank in town." You continue your work, giving him space to express his thoughts without interruption. The question of children's futures weighs heavily on farming parents, the desire for their success and happiness balanced against the hope for continuity, for the farm's traditions to extend into another generation. "But I've been thinking," Thomas continues after a moment, "about whether there might be a way to use those skills here, on the farm, to keep better accounts, perhaps, to understand the business side better." You look up then, meeting his eyes. The farm would benefit from such skills, you acknowledge. Farming's changing, becoming more of a business and less just a way of life. A farmer who understands figures has an advantage. The conversation continues intermittently through the evening, Thomas expressing both his attachment to farm life and his awareness of its challenges, you sharing honest assessments of agriculture's uncertainties while affirming its fundamental value. No firm decisions emerge, nor should they yet. But the exchange represents an important acknowledgement of the choices facing rural youth in this period of transition. As January yields to February, subtle signs of winter's loosening grip appear. Slightly longer daylight hours, occasional days of unexpected mildness between cold spells, the first tentative swelling of buds on sheltered trees. The farm begins a gradual awakening, like a sleeper stirring before fully rousing. This transitional period brings its own tasks, checking stored seed for spring planting, ensuring tools are ready for the increased activity ahead, assessing livestock conditions after winter confinement, planning crop rotations and field allocations for the coming growing season. One critical February task is the delivery of lambs, the sheep having been bred in autumn to produce spring offspring when grass begins growing again. The pregnant ewes require careful monitoring as their time approaches, sometimes needing assistance with difficult births, occasionally requiring you to bring newborn lambs into the cottage kitchen if they're born during particularly cold weather. The arrival of the first lamb each year marks a significant moment in the farm calendar, tangible evidence of continuing cycles of life persisting despite winter's challenges. The children gather around these earliest arrivals, marveling at the lamb's wobbly legs and instinctive search for their mother's milk, at the miraculous transition from birth to standing that occurs within minutes. "Will this one be kept or sold?" asks James, gently stroking a newborn lamb's head as it nurses from its mother in a clean stall in the barn. "We'll see how it develops," you answer, the farmer's pragmatic assessment never far from even these emotionally appealing moments. "If it's a strong ram, we might keep it for breeding. If it's a ewe, perhaps for wool. Others will go to market eventually." This matter-of-fact approach to livestock, appreciating their beauty and vitality while recognizing their eventual utilitarian purpose, characterizes the farmer's relationship with animals. There's genuine care and responsibility in your stewardship, but also the clear understanding that the farm's economics require eventual sale or slaughter of animals raised for that purpose. By late February, weather begins its uneven progression towards spring, days of surprising warmth interspersed with returns to winter cold, the land gradually shedding its dormancy. Green shoots appear in sheltered spots, snowdrops and early crocuses emerge near the cottage walls. Birdsong increases as territories are established for the coming breeding season. The farm's pace quickens accordingly. Preparations for spring planting intensify. Repairs to fences and outbuildings damaged by winter weather gain urgency. Pruning of fruit trees must be completed before sap begins rising in earnest. The relative quiet of deep winter yields to increasing activity as the growing season approaches. Your body responds to these changes almost instinctively, energy levels rising with the lengthening days, muscles readying for the increased physical demands ahead, mental focus shifting from winter's maintenance mode to spring's creative planning. Generations of agricultural life have embedded these seasonal rhythms in human biology as surely as in the land itself. As March arrives, bringing the official beginning of spring, though winter's influence still lingers, you find yourself completing the annual cycle begun a year earlier. The farm has moved through its full seasonal progression, from spring planting to summer growth, to autumn harvest, to winter rest, and now back to awakening. Your family has weathered another year of agricultural life, with all its challenges, satisfactions, disappointments, and small triumphs. Reflecting on this completed cycle while preparing for the one ahead, you recognize both continuity and change in your Edwardian farm existence. The fundamental rhythms remain, the same seasonal progression your father and grandfather experienced, the same essential relationship between human effort and natural processes. Yet subtle shifts continue, new varieties of seed becoming available, mechanical innovations gradually appearing on larger farms, economic pressures intensifying for small agricultural operations like yours. One evening in early March, with a hint of spring softness in the air despite the lingering chill, you walk the boundaries of your land alone. The sunset casts long shadows across fields that will soon be prepared for planting, gilding the landscape with momentary beauty. In the distance, smoke rises from the cottage chimney where Emma prepares the evening meal, where the children complete school assignments or help with household tasks, where the centre of your life remains anchored despite external changes. The land itself appears timeless in this light, the gentle contours of Devon fields shaped by centuries of agricultural use, the hedgerows marking boundaries established generations ago, the ancient oak at the farm's edge that was already mature when your grandfather first worked this soil. Yet, you're increasingly aware that the farming methods practiced on this seemingly eternal landscape are in flux, that economic and technological changes press against traditional approaches from all sides. You consider your children's futures as you walk, Thomas with his aptitude for figures and growing interest in mechanical innovations, Alice developing the domestic skills that might serve her as a farm wife or in other capacities, James showing early signs of the practical ingenuity that characterises successful farmers, little Mary still too young for her path to be discernible. Will they continue in agriculture, maintaining the connection to land that has defined your family for generations? Or will they join the increasing migration to towns and cities, seeking opportunities in the industrial and commercial sectors that grow, while agriculture's economic position becomes more precarious? The question remains open, its answer depending on factors both within and beyond your control. As darkness deepens and the evening star appears above the western horizon, you turn back toward the cottage, your footsteps following the familiar path worn by daily traversing of this land. The windows glow with lamplight, smoke continues rising from the chimney, and as you draw closer, you can hear the murmur of voices from within, your family going about their evening routine, creating the domestic harmony that balances the external challenges of farming life. This, perhaps, is the essence of your Edwardian agricultural existence, the tension between continuity and change, between ancient patterns and modern pressures, between the deep satisfaction of working directly with land and animals and the economic vulnerability such work entails in a rapidly industrializing world. You enter the cottage, closing the door on gathering darkness, moving into the warmth and light of family presence. Emma looks up from her cooking, offering a smile of welcome. The children's conversation pauses briefly as you remove your coat and boots, then resumes with the comfortable familiarity of daily life. This moment, this simple return to shelter after work, this gathering of family, this sharing of daily experiences represents what endures regardless of external changes. Whatever transformations await agriculture in the coming decades, whatever shifts occur in rural economics and technologies, these fundamental human connections remain essential. As you take your place at the table, accepting the bowl of stew Emma offers, participating in the evening's conversation about school events and farm happenings, you exist simultaneously in multiple time frames, honouring agricultural traditions stretching back through countless generations, managing present-day challenges of Edwardian farming, and preparing, however uncertainly, for a future that will undoubtedly bring further changes to rural life. The farm year completes its cycle and begins anew. Seeds that will soon be planted hold both the genetic memory of ancient crops and the potential for adaptation to changing conditions. Children around your table carry both inherited knowledge and the capacity for innovation. The land itself, seemingly permanent, undergoes constant subtle transformation through natural processes and human intervention. This is farming's paradox and its profound truth, that it exists at the intersection of permanence and change, of tradition and adaptation, of natural cycles and human initiative. As an Edwardian farmer, you stand at a particularly significant moment in this continuum, witnessing the acceleration of agricultural change while maintaining connections to methods and knowledge accumulated through centuries of rural experience. Tomorrow will bring its specific tasks: animals to tend, preparations for planting, ongoing maintenance of the farm's infrastructure. The weeks ahead will unfold with spring's increasing momentum, drawing you and your family into the intensity of the growing season. Economic challenges will persist. Weather will bring both cooperation and difficulty. The balance between effort and reward will remain precarious. Yet for tonight, in the quiet completion of another farm year's cycle, there is a moment of equilibrium, of acknowledgement that despite all challenges, your family has once again succeeded in the fundamental human task of deriving sustenance from the land through knowledgeable labour. This achievement, repeated annually on farms across England and throughout the world, represents both agriculture's mundane reality and its quiet heroism. As evening deepens toward night, as conversation gives way to preparations for sleep, as the fire in the range is banked to last until morning, you carry this awareness with you, that farming in this transitional Edwardian period means participating in something simultaneously ancient and evolving, challenging and rewarding, practical and profound. Outside, the land rests in darkness, gathering strength for spring's renewal. Inside, the farmer rests too, accumulating energy for the work ahead. Between them exists the relationship that has defined human experience since cultivation began. The reciprocal exchange of care and sustenance, of labour and reward, of attentive stewardship and generous response. It is enough. Despite uncertainties, despite difficulties, despite the shifting economic and technological landscape of early 20th century agriculture, this fundamental relationship between farmer and land provides meaning that transcends mere livelihood. And as sleep approaches, bringing temporary respite from physical labour and mental calculation, there is peace in this knowledge that tomorrow the ancient and evolving work of farming will continue, rooted in traditions stretching back through generations, yet open to the innovations that each new season might bring. The cycle completes. The cycle begins again, and the Edwardian farmer, like countless agricultural predecessors and successors, moves between these endpoints with practiced skill, enduring hope, and quiet dignity.